In this video of the CUSTOMISE module of our training course, we're going to be looking at how we expand our datasets within Google Analytics 4. And when we talk about expanding the dataset, what we're talking about is those dimensions and metrics. Dimensions being those text-based fields like date and campaign, and the metrics being numerical fields like sessions and users. We can expand these in Google Analytics using our own data points. And we might think that there's already a lot in there from Google Analytics 4 out of the box, and that is true. But there are going to be times where we need to expand these dimensions and these metrics to account for business-specific requirements, or maybe something so granular about a specific type of event that you are tracking that might not be standardized. The way that we approach this is looking at something called custom definitions. Custom definitions is the process of adding in custom dimensions and custom metrics. And the way we access this is by going into the admin workspace of GA4. Once in the admin workspace, we'll find the custom definitions list in the menu, and going through there, we'll be able to find that there's two tabs, one for the custom dimensions and one for the custom metrics. Now, it's worth noting at this point that you have to have admin access rights in GA4 to be able to customize these. So going through this process, if I click Create, and let's say we're going to add a custom dimension, it opens up this panel which gives us a couple of options. Other than giving it a name, which is really important because this is what it will be called all over the interface, one of the first things we have to do is define the scope of the custom dimension. And using this drop-down, it gives us a couple of options, but this is something that might expand over time. And when we talk about scope, we're talking about where that data is relevant. So is it a user level property or is it an event parameter? Is it something specifically to do with the user or is it something specifically to do with the event? Now, a good example we're going to go through here is adding in the search term for internal site searches. And the way that we do that is that we will go through and create a custom dimension for that search term. Now, this is an automatically collected event in Google Analytics 4, specifically using the enhanced measurement events. It is website specific, but can be used on apps as well. By default, Google doesn't provide the search term into our standard reports. And so we need to go through this process of adding it in as a custom dimension before we can get at that data in our reporting. So let's go through the process of adding in the search term as a custom dimension. The first thing we do is give it a name. Let's call it something like site search term. This is an event level parameter, so we're going to use event as the scope. And then I'm going to give it a description. I'm going to give it a description that's relevant and just explains that this is looking at internal site searches only and the search term that was made. Now it's going to ask for the event parameter to pull into this custom dimension. Now I don't have all of the event parameters for each of my events stored in my memory. No one does. So this is where I go to some reference material. There's a nice helpful guide on Google's documentation that gives me a list of all of these events and all of their parameters. Using that guide, I can see for this event, the search term is search_term. Dan's going through an example of setting this up for one of the enhanced measurement events. However, all of the enhanced measurement events might have parameters you want to set up as custom dimensions or custom metrics. I've done a whole deep dive video running through each one of them and all the parameters that you might want to use. So if you want to get an idea of what you want to set up, then check out that video linked in the description. So I'm going to go into this field here and I'm going to find the search_term parameter. It auto-populates the list with all the parameters, which is really handy. However, if you don't see your parameter here, don't worry. It can take a couple of days for it to get through into here, especially if you've just implemented a new event. So now I'm happy with that, we can click save, and now we've got this custom dimension in our list ready to use. In terms of using this custom dimension, it's now available all over the interface. So I can go into any report, for example, the events report. I can go in and add a secondary dimension, and there's a section at the top of that dropdown called custom, and I can go find my new custom dimension from that list and include that in as a secondary dimension. Now that's not going to be relevant to all of the events because this one specifically is the site search term. So let's filter this for view search results and see what that looks like. So as you can see here, it's looking at all of the site search terms for each of the view search results events. And we can see what those terms are and the count of them, so how many times they've occurred. We don't have to use this report specifically, we can use this in any report that we've looked at. So in any detail report, we can add it in as a secondary dimension, but not only that, we can use it as a report filter and also a comparison in any report we happen to go into. So now I'm going to hand over to Dara. Dara's going to give us a bit of an overview around why this is so important and where we can use this data.
GA4 is great straight out of the box, but it's very much a one-size-fits-all. So to get full value, it's really important that you use custom dimensions to track your own business-specific information. An example of this might be if you're a content website and you have lots of different authors, you'd want to track the author name against each piece of content into GA4 so that you can do your own reporting on that. That data would then be available as a secondary dimension in any of your detail reports, but it would also be available for you to build dashboards outside of GA4 using Looker Studio or any other dashboarding tool. One thing to bear in mind is that this feature is not backdatable, so it's important that you start tracking this information as soon as possible so you can start to build up your historical data.
Great, thanks, Dara. So as you can see, really important to get that set up so that we can use this data inside of Google Analytics and outside. The last thing I'm going to mention about custom definitions is how important it is to get them set up as early as possible. The reason being is that they only start collecting data when you click save. It doesn't matter how much historical data you've got in terms of the events, those parameters will only start collecting data once we've got those custom definitions in place. Now, this doesn't affect the BigQuery export. If you've got all of your GA4 data syncing to BigQuery on a daily or streaming basis, then all of your events and the parameters will be there for you to use and historically. This only affects the interface and any dashboards we might be building outside of Google Analytics 4. I just had to pause him because he's just mentioned BigQuery, but he's not explaining anything about it. I've done a whole deep dive video on what BigQuery is and why it's useful in the context of Google Analytics 4 if you want to learn a bit more. So check out that link in the description. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.